It's Saturday, January 10th, and this huge storm won't stop. This is now the third day in a row that we're experiencing severe weather from the same system, and it is going to be centered on the southeast. We have a slight and a marginal risk, and this is mostly going to be for a damaging wind threat, probably widespread 60 to 70 mile an hour wind gust, with those 70 mile an hours likely being concentrated within that yellow shaded area. We also have a slight tornado risk, a little less widespread today, though, but still in pretty much primarily the same area. Maybe a couple of spin up tornadoes today. Then our hail risk is going to be essentially zero. And this is how the weather is actually going to unfold for this event. I think already about 3 hours before sunrise, kind of when all of this messy stuff from yesterday conglomerates into one line along our cold front. And that's when we could already start seeing some severe weather with this system. So very early in the morning today, when all of these storm interactions happen, we could potentially get a couple of stronger areas like this cluster right here. At this point, we're potentially already seeing damaging winds being produced. And I think the tornado threat isn't even zero all the way back in this area along this line. And even up here in this little line right here, all these storms conglomerate together, and this is actually going to merge into this right here, giving us our main tornado threat. Now, this is going to continue to potentially produce all hazards of severe weather, but something we're going to see as we get closer to sunrise, the pre-sunrise low-level jet is going to kick in, and we're already going to have a lot of advection in front of our big jet stream, kind of sucking up all of those good solid ingredients. And with the low level jet coupled with that, we're also going to see a lot of blips in front of our line start to form as well. And when those crash into our main line, those could momentarily increase the strength of our line. So we haven't even reached sunrise yet, and we're already seeing a lot of storm interactions, which could end up being favorable. And we could even end up seeing areas of increased spin, tornadoes from these, and a lot of clusters producing damaging winds. And especially when we see that one big cluster kind of merge right here in our main tornado risk area, by sunrise, we're still going to be seeing pretty much those same solid ingredients. Those solid ingredients are going to look really much the same all the way up to pretty much sunrise and even lunchtime. We're also going to see really favorable shear, pretty much parallel to our line. That's also going to be favorable for some spin up tornadoes as well, pretty much the whole day. And this is going to continue like this all the way up until probably lunchtime. That is when that threat for tornadoes and damaging winds is going to finally calm down a bit. Now, there is something that's going to be a little weird. During this time, there's going to be a very sharp line, probably around the Atlanta, Georgia area, even though this is technically severe warned, where our instability is going to be very limited. So we're going to go from almost 1,000 Cape to almost zero in this corridor right here. Now, our shear parameters are still going to be really solid, so I definitely think we'll still be seeing some storms with some strong gusts, but I think that severe potential is going to be extremely limited, and it's going to rely on some lucky clustering happening. And also, if we get a couple of kinks in our line like this, those could also be areas of stronger weather altogether. But as the jet stream gets stronger as we go throughout the day, we're going to see something weird happen. We're going to see a lot more advection of our ingredients further north, and that's when we could potentially get a couple of surprises up here in even North Carolina, and even as we go up into the mid-Atlantic region for some stronger storms as well. And the last thing in the southeast, once we get kind of a return of ingredients from all that advection from our jet stream, because all the ingredients will pretty much be eaten up by this first line, we'll see a return. And along our cold front in the area with the strongest instability return, we might see another cluster pop up. And I think momentarily for at least an hour, this could potentially produce damaging winds and tornadoes. But moving further north now we're looking at the mid-Atlantic. We're seeing a couple of clusters and potentially all the way up in North Carolina and even in the Delaware region. This is going to be a interesting region because we're going to have our warm front right about here connected to our low pressure center and cold front complex. So this is going to mean that this area is going to have substantially better shear. Now, yesterday we got a little bit of a surprise up here where there was no instability near kind of the northeast in this circle right here, but the shear parameters were super good and we saw a line of severe warned storms. So I'm not saying that's going to happen here along this warm front, but there's definitely a possibility for some stronger storms right here. And once again, we're going to have that advection of all those positive severe weather ingredients up there. So that definitely is possible. Not going to completely say it's going to happen though, but definitely be prepared for some stronger storms all the way up into the mid-Atlantic region that are possible. And this is a look at our jet stream. We can see the first hints of it really starting to crank around probably a couple of hours before midday. That's kind of indicated by this purple blotch right here in our jet stream. And this is not really going to play as much of a role in our kind of earlier morning potential outbreak that we could see, although it's going to lend really favorable shear to that area and kind of a glancing blow with a forcing that's mostly going to be brought by that cold front and a lot of storm interactions as well, and just general pretty solid ingredients. But as we go through the day, it's going to still really crank up somehow even more. And that's going to suck a lot of positive ingredients all the way up to the mid-Atlantic, kind of in that Delaware area that we were just talking about. And this is even going to be closer to our jet max now, lending even better shear to this region, which is why I do think we could kind of get a surprise up here with some stronger storms. Potentially not severe though, but I'm not going to completely rule that out for now because this setup doesn't look too bad for that. And this is just a general weather sounding from our main risk area down in the southeast. And this is really what it's going to look from a couple of hours before sunrise all the way up to around midday when we finally start to see those storms calm down. Thermodynamically, a little saturated in the lower parts of the atmosphere, showing a little bit more of a stable layer. We do have a baby inverted V down there though, and we also are going to have surface-based storms. Some curvature in our hodograph, a really good shear once again. Even some pretty solid bulk shear that's going to definitely help these storms sustain. And another thing that's going to help them sustain is a really solid amount of moisture, close to a 70 dew point. And something here which is going to lead to definitely more of a factor for these storms maybe becoming severe is this cape, and not really a whole lot of capping going on. Our convective inhibition is going to be close to zero. And thermodynamically, we have a couple, maybe a little tongue right here of a temperature inversion, but it definitely looks like these storms are going to be able to sustain along that cold front, no problem. So we have instability in a really high 3 cape. In a lot of areas, we're going to have over a 103 cape, which is going to be better for that tornado threat as well. So all in all, not really seeing a hail threat here. It's going to be a super linear storm mode, which kind of spells bad news for that. Our lapse rates are going to be pretty poor like they've been throughout this entire weather sequence over the past couple of days. And we're not even seeing that much wind veering. Wind veering is something that would help with a tornado potential. We're not seeing it, but because all the other ingredients are there, I definitely think we're going to see at least a couple spin up tornadoes along this line. And the very last thing I want to talk about is how much cold air is going to almost be invading the more southern parts of the US. This is going to be a pretty sharp cold front, and that's kind of made evident by what we're seeing here. This is what it will look like in the morning, and I want you to look how far south and east that cold air is going to move. This is it around nightfall, and it's only going to push further south. This is what it looks like tomorrow morning, and we can see that our freezing line has moved from almost Missouri, and we're seeing sub 50s down in the Florida Panhandle in southern Georgia at that point. So really cold. The coldest area, of course, is going to be up here in Minnesota. We're seeing feels like temperatures in the negative teens, maybe even touching the negative 20s in a couple of areas. And we're just seeing a lot of really cold temps across the United States as well. And with those cold temps, we're finally going to start to see some snow accumulation that's not entirely out here in the Rockies. We're going to see a little line almost from where that freezing line is. Just probably a couple of flurries, maybe in some isolated areas, you'll reach a total inch of accumulation. Other than up here in Maine, Maine's going to get a pretty solid dusting, maybe reaching up to 8 to 9 inches in some isolated areas. But across up here in the Midwest, Northeast, and then even this little line moving from the far northeastern corner of New Mexico all the way up through Iowa, potentially seeing an inch of snow today. So that would be a nice little surprise.